story?
Absolutely. My story began in January of 1976 with two simultaneous medical diagnoses. I was pregnant with our second baby, and my 30-year-old husband had terminal cancer. It was a very rare cancer. There were no known treatment protocols, and his doctors assured us that he would be dead within a year. So while he spent 12 grueling months of surgeries and chemo and the maximum radiation his body could tolerate, I started researching. At Sloan Kettering, in the medical libraries, I called doctors and clinics all over the country, in Canada and Mexico and Germany and Europe, looking desperately for new resources, new treatment options. And actually, I uncovered quite a lot of wonderfully promising approaches, but nothing in time to help my husband, who died on schedule in February of 1977. He left me with two babies, a broken heart, and above all, a burning desire to make a difference. And so I made a commitment that I would not bury with him everything I had learned over that last year of research, and I made a commitment that I should be able to help at least one family avoid the terrible fate that ours endured. And so in the fall of that year, the Center for Advancement in Cancer Education was born as a nonprofit, and I'm proud to state, Dawn, that in the last 29 years we have helped over 26,000 patients without charging a fee, and we've trained many tens of thousands more in prevention.
Oh, fabulous story, Susan. Congratulations. Now, you're a great advocate of the benefits of diet and nutrition for cancer prevention. Tell us about that.
When I began my work in the 70s, the National Academy of Sciences had just come out with its report linking diet and cancer. And those guidelines, less animal protein, less animal fat, higher fiber, more fresh fruits and vegetables, have of course been endorsed by the American Cancer Society and the National Cancer Institute. And they are largely relevant today as well. There are over 4,500 studies that show that fruits and vegetables can specifically prevent at least 15 different types of cancer, like breast and prostate and lung and cervical cancers. And a recent meta-analysis, which is a research study of the research studies, looking at 170 different studies from 17 different nations, concluded that those people who consume the most fruits and vegetables have half the cancer rates of those who consume the least.
Well, now, Susan, your foundation's materials state that today's cancer patients suffer not only from cancer, but information overload. Tell us what you mean by that.
Certainly. When I began my research in the 70s, it was nigh on impossible to find anything about alternative or complementary or integrative medicine. Those things were just whispered about behind closed doors or in dark alleys, and it was extremely hard to find information. Now, with the information age and the advent of the internet, which of course was not available to me in the 70s, and of course thanks to the broadcast and print media, whose information is largely quite accurate, and of course conflicting medical opinions from different doctors as well as well-meaning neighbors, friends, and relatives, the average cancer patient is simply overwhelmed with information. And what happens is that the passive ones are only too happy to abdicate their participatory role to the first oncology opinion that comes along. You take the responsibility, I can't handle it, so to speak. And those who really want to be informed, make informed decisions as well-trained medical consumers, end up researching themselves into totally indecisive confusion. Comes our organization that doesn't tell people what to do or interfere with doctor-patient relationships, but provides resources and especially guidance to help people through the maze of resources and opportunities and treatment options, and come up with a game plan, a holistic game plan that will be protective of their very precious resources of time and energy and money, not only respectful of their financial limitations, but also their geographic limitations, the logistics of their lives, and especially their belief systems.
Well, now the Center for Advancement of Cancer Education says their primary focus is geared toward cancer prevention through lifestyle training. What are some of the lifestyle mistakes that many of us are making?
You know, I think the most important lifestyle mistake that we make is to forget the basics of nature and nurture. We need fresh air. We need lots of pure water. We need pure, unadulterated foods. We need exercise and rest. We need stress management. We forget to find our joie de vivre. We forget to look for our personal connection with life purpose, and we often ignore our connection spiritually to the universe. I think those are the basics that we need to start looking at.
Well, now, Susan, one term I thought particularly intriguing was primary prevention, not just early detection. Are you saying most cancers are preventable?
Yes, I am. And I'm not alone. What we're saying, first of all, there's nothing wrong with early detection. It's much better than late detection. We know that. However, it is not the same as preventing cancer in the first place. Our children have a 1 in 2 lifetime risk of cancer today. And scientific research published in reputable journals is telling us that lifestyle factors, especially diet, play a very large role in our ability to prevent the disease.
Now, you encourage people to pay attention to biological terrain, biochemical individuality as key ways to minimize risk. Tell us about that.
Biological terrain is one of my favorite topics to discuss. And the key point here is that we need to create, rather than just focusing on the tumor, we need to create an environment that is inhospitable to cancer, an internal milieu, if you will, that is unfriendly to the growth of malignancy. There's a classic debate between Antoine Béchamp and Louis Pasteur looking at the best way to deal with malaria. And Pasteur said what we need to do is kill every last mosquito. Béchamp, on the other hand, said we ought to be dealing with draining the swamp. Now, Pasteur got all the glory with the germ theory and antibiotics and pasteurization, but on his deathbed, Pasteur admitted to Béchamp that Béchamp was right all along. Le terrain, c'est tout. In other words, the terrain is everything. So I think we should be looking, when we talk about cancer, in the same way. We should be not trying to destroy every last cancer cell, which is basically impossible to do anyway, since we're constantly producing new cancer cells. They just don't always grow into tumors. We should be looking at the breeding ground. And we can find a tremendous amount of power as we look for restoring host resistance. We need a very alkaline terrain. Cancers love to thrive in acidic tissues. We need a lot of oxygenation because cancers are anaerobic. They hate oxygen. We need to make sure that we are not feeding those cancers sugar, which are their favorite food, or a high-fat diet, or especially an omega-6 rich diet, which is immunosuppressive. We need to avoid free radicals that come to us through environmental toxins and stress toxins. We need to neutralize them with bioavailable antioxidants. We need mineral-rich soil. We need soil that has excellent drainage through plentiful water and appropriate eliminatory activity. So there are many important ways that we can change our biological terrain from a cancer-inducing one to a cancer-inhibiting one.
Well, Susan, fascinating information. Tell me, can you share with us a patient story that reminds you of why you became involved with everything that you do?
Yes, and I will talk about one case that is almost as old as I am with this center. Ruth was diagnosed with metastatic malignant melanoma Doctors opened her up, closed her up, found cancer in 98% of her body, including her brain and her liver. They basically sent her home to die, expected that she would not make it through the weekend, and her prognosis was about 48 hours. Ruth fully recovered. She did it through intense prayer and an intense regimen of plant juices. And by the way, we need to be primarily on a plant-based diet. When she was strong enough with those two resources, we were able to refer her to an MD, nutritionist, metabolic doctor, and endocrinologist. And those resources took her the rest of the way.
Well, that's an incredible recovery story, Susan. Thank you. Once again, Dr. Susan Silberstein. She's the Executive Director of the Center for the Advancement of Cancer Education. Dr. Silberstein, thanks for joining us here in Your Cancer Today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.